It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Bruce Smith, CEO and founder of Hydrow. Hydrow is the leading connected rower bringing the on-water experience of rowing live to consumers' home. A lifelong rower and former U.S. national team rowing coach, Bruce isn't just another founder in it for the exit. With a passion for the mental and physical benefits of rowing, as well as the connection and community it creates, Bruce launched Hydrow to empower consumers to live healthier, enhanced lives through the shared experience of rowing. Bruce Smith, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you very, very much for having me. It's fun to be here.
Great to have you here. And, as we spoke a couple of months back, huge fan of rowing. One of my daughters got into that when she was in junior high school, and did it all the way through college. And I've been one of those parents at the sideline of many regattas over the last 8-9 years. And what a wonderful sport. And I know you've been doing it for a long time too. And we'll get to that. I'm sure you didn't start as an infant, but we like to kind of start at the beginning, Bruce, and tell us a little bit about your early family life, where you grew up, what mom and dad did, and what were some of the things that inspired you as a kid?
Yeah, way back in the Wayback Machine, I'm Canadian, and I grew up in New Brunswick in Canada, which is really, it is far, far away from here. I'm in Boston today, but it's like an 8-hour drive, but it really is different world. It's a tiny province in terms of population, and it's actually hard to get there. And I grew up in a little college town called Fredericton, and it's just a really great place to grow up, where there was a ton of opportunity for somebody. I was a pretty busy kid, and just lots of stuff that I could get up to without getting into too much trouble, depending on who you talk to.
What did mom and dad do?
My dad was a lawyer and, a legal eagle, and he ended his career as a, teaching law at the University of New Brunswick and writing several books on professional conduct. And my mom was a pharmacist, and they were both, busy professionals when I was growing up. So I had lots of free time where I really could get into some pretty good trouble.
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, 2 older brothers. So I was spoiled. They were a lot older than me. They were about 10 years older than I was. And so I was the spoiled youngest child by a wide margin.
How were your school days? Did you enjoy school in the early elementary?
School was just torture. I read an enormous number of books. When I was 10, I finished David Copperfield, and I judged a book not so much by its quality, but by its volume. So I'd have $2 or $3 to spend at the bookstore, or $4, and I would buy the thickest books I could buy. So
you got the most value out of it. I love
it.
it.
I did. It was high value, and it happened to be Signa Classics. So nice. I had kind of an extraordinary reading career, and we had a lot of books around the house. So I entertained myself reading a lot, but I did not enjoy school.
Did you have a favorite genre that you read as a kid? Was it more?
Dickens was kind of my go-to. I really love those long convoluted sentences, and then it kind of went from there. And I got into Wilkie Collins and Dorothy Parker and Taylor Caldwell, anything, completely omnivorous. Anything that you could read, I would read.
Love it. And what about other activities? Did sports become a major part of what you did as a kid, or that come a little bit later?
My family was kind of the opinion that sports were sort of a waste of time.
Mm.
And I played the piano. My original career, I was going to be a professional pianist. And
Oh,
one of the aspects of growing up in a small town, it's a pretty shallow pool, so it was easy to be the best piano player.
right, right.
So I played a lot, like I really, and I still play a lot. I love
What
that piano.
age did you start learning?
I started when I was 5,
Oh my gosh! Wow.
and yeah, I had this amazing German teacher, Mrs. Lotz. She gave me a little mint candy at the end of every lesson, even though I didn't practice. But like the first 3 or 4 years, my parents really had to like crack the whip, and then after that, I was desperate to play, so I played 2 or 3 hours a day, and I really did. I had some professional aspirations, and I think
Wow.
lucky for me, I moved out of my parents' house when I was in grade 12, so I was living by myself, and
Yeah.
I didn't have a piano to practice on, so I ended up accompanying some friends for for their auditions for
Right.
college, but
Right.
I didn't actually. And I prepared a couple pieces for audition, but I ended up switching to English, which was a much, much wiser choice for me because I'm just, I worked hard and I like piano, but I'm not like, I was going to be, if I was lucky, I'd end up teaching, kids like me in some small town and not
Right.
being,
Right.
on the stage at Carnegie Hall.
Right. Well, you are a founder, and we'll get to that in a minute. But any entrepreneurial things that you did as a kid? Was there, that instinct come early to you?
It did. I think my first business was when I was 12. I made these brass candlesticks that
Ah,
you could hang on the wall, and my big order was to a local church. They bought 12 of them for $25 a piece, and I thought I was rich beyond measure.
wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Wow.
It was
Did
really
you
great.
actually make
Yeah, no, I had to make them. I bought
Nice.
a sheet of brass and some brass tubing, and I welded it together, and I had no idea what I was doing, but it kind of sort of worked, and there was a very nice lady there who thought that I was cute, and so she was kind enough to be my patron. And I went on from there to paint houses. I started painting houses when I was, 13 or 14 years old. And I just, I worked like a dog and loved working and loved having my own money to spend. And
Mm.
as soon as I could drive, I was out the door and, worked from dawn till dusk,
Yeah.
whenever I was out of school.
What were some of the things growing up that inspired you? Maybe things that you learned from mom and dad, or maybe your piano teacher, or some of the entrepreneurial things you've got. Any kind of key lessons there?
I think that, I don't know if I learned this then because I think that memory is a funny thing, but uh, there is beauty everywhere. You just have to find the right frame and the right resonance, and whether it's a piece of jazz or a really formal piece, like Bach or Mendelssohn or whatever it is, that like it's finding the resonance.
Mm.
And same, with like when you're painting a house and finding, the right rhythm for it. That everything has that rhythm. You just got to look for it. And if you can look for it, then you can really understand things at a pretty deep level and get some real, um, I don't know, like velocity and also some real joy out of whatever you're doing. Doesn't matter what it is. You just got to figure out what that resonance is.
Love it. Love it. Now, you went to McGill, great Canadian university, great overall university. Was it kind of a foregone conclusion that you'd go to school? Did your older brothers
No, no,
go,
no.
mom and dad?
Literally, so I can't believe my luck. I just can't. I hated school. I skipped a lot of school. I happened to test really well, and I went into the guidance counselor's office in Fredericton High School in like I don't know, like April or something, and all my friends were applying to all these schools, and I figured like, oh, I guess, but I didn't live with anybody. I lived by myself, so nobody was
Right.
really directing me. And there was one school that had a single page application and no essay requirement, and it was McGill. And so that was the one school that I applied to. And so I literally, like, that was the only place I applied. And I was just super lucky that they accepted me. And I think a couple of teachers at my school might have behind the scenes done a little bit of work, but I was oblivious to all of that.
Right.
And just super, super, super lucky. And I loved McGill. It was just a fantastic education. Really enjoyed it.
You found a joy in going to school once you got to university, it sounds like.
So I went to school. First semester, I got a 178 GPA on a 4.3 scale. I think I went to like maybe 10 or 15% of my classes. Um, I did that for the first whole year. I worked really hard. I had a really successful summer painting, and I made a ton of money. And my brother and I decided, like, hey, let's not do regular stuff. Let's go to Europe. So I went to Europe for 4 months with my brother during the first semester of what was supposed to be my second year. And when I came back from that trip, I realized that school was awesome. And my next semester, like the next quarter in school, I got a 3.9 GPA.
Wow.
And I didn't look back. I just some switch, some kind of maturity or something kicked over in my
Maybe
head.
the international travel, Bruce. I mean, that might have been part of it, right? Kind of
It
opened your
really,
eyes.
we went to every museum,
Cool.
every church in Europe,
Yeah.
and we just, we followed all the guidebooks. And something I realized that I really, really enjoyed the process of learning, and also that English was like this key that could unlock understanding about all the things that I thought were beautiful in the world. So, yeah, I got really excited about it. And then you couldn't get me out of school. I was in school forever.
Came back with a new
Yeah.
insurgent. So you discovered crew at McGill, or did you
Yep.
partake
Yeah.
before? Okay, so how did that come about?
No, yeah, my first year I didn't do anything. I just, I became very familiar with the bars in Montreal, and uh,
And there are quite a few.
yeah, they're a great place actually, and inexpensive beers on Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
And then I I was on the rowing machine a lot in the gym, and
Mm.
the president of McGill Crew came over and said like, hey, you should come out for crew, and so I did, and
Well,
I
now, had you done the rowing machine before? Was that part of your
no
regular workout? No,
no,
just
it was
kind
just
of said
random.
looks like an interest machine. Let's see if we can just do something on that.
It was like physically challenging,
Yeah.
and I would sit on it. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know, like literally no idea. I just sat down and started rowing, but I
Right.
did it like same time, same day, every day of the week. And so this guy came over and said like, hey, you should actually come out and try rowing. And that was that. And then I got very involved with the crew program there and became president of the club,
Yeah.
and tried really hard to make the Canadian national team. A bunch of the people that I started rowing with at McGill did go on to the Olympics for Canada, and a couple of them actually have gold medals from
Wow.
the Olympics. I was not that good. Like I tried and tried, but I didn't make the team. I didn't even really come close, and ended up A, with a chip on my shoulder,
Mm.
and B, coaching. Because
Yeah.
that I couldn't quite shake it, but I was not good enough to make the team myself. So I started trying to teach people how to do it, and got really involved with coaching and really really enjoyed that.
That's awesome. So did you coach club teams locally there in Montreal? Did you coach at McGill, or
Yeah,
where did your coaching start?
I did a bunch of stuff. I was going to school more or less full time, and I was rowing like more or less full time, and then I was working to support myself.
Right.
Canada's the kind of place where you can pay your way through school, and I did. And so I was super, super busy. And then I started, kind of nibbling away at coaching a little bit. And I moved to Chicago
Mm.
with my girlfriend at the time, and um, thought that I would. It was 1995, which is a long time ago now, but I really thought I would go to Chicago. I'd make some money. I'd train really hard. I'd be very focused, and I would sneak onto the Canadian national team in 1997 after everybody retired. Because after
Right.
the Olympics, everybody quits.
Yeah.
And so I got there, and then I saw an ad for coaching, and I got involved like kind of deeply in coaching. And so I coached a club program, and I coached a high
Mm.
school program, Jesuit school in one of the Chicago suburbs, Loyola Academy. And then I ended up really kind of, doing entrepreneurial things, but also coaching a lot. And so I
Yeah.
coached this high school program, and built a couple boathouses on the Chicago River, and with obviously a lot of help, not just me, but it became something that I really dug into pretty hard. And
Mm.
that coaching thread was always kind of a side gig, but I kept going and going and going, and I ended up coaching at the collegiate level at Dartmouth for a couple of years, and then I ended up earning a spot on the U.S. national team through the trial system, and have been to the World Championships 10 times
Yeah.
for the
That's
USA.
awesome. Now, when did you actually coach at Dartmouth? What years were those?
It was like 2003, 2004,
Yeah. Yeah.
and again, some really nice people, and we had left Chicago at that point. I had a couple kids, and we moved to the country, and it was just a 10-minute drive from Dartmouth. And I really thought that I was going to retire from coaching, and I literally, like the week I arrived in Vermont, I got a phone call from somebody who I didn't know, and they were like, "Hey, we need an assistant coach. Somebody brought up your name, and then I got sucked back into the coaching world. couldn't get out. Tried and
Well,
tried.
I think I mentioned this when we spoke. One of my daughters did row, and she was captain of the women's team at Dartmouth in the end.
Isn't that crazy? I
Yeah,
know. It's a small world.
yeah.
We live
14, 15 years later. I mean, quite a
right.
few years after you
Yeah.
were there, but oh gosh, I just love the sport. Well, let's talk a little bit about rowing, only because I'm a relatively new person to it. I do row. I love going to the gym. Like you, when I first got on the machine, I had no idea what I was doing, and then of course as I got into the sport, it's just such a great workout. What for you, in those early days, what really attracted you to the sport? I know that, you got kind of that walk on come and come with us, but what did you like most about it? Can you remember back when you
Yeah.
first started rowing?
I've thought about this a little bit. I think so. In retrospect, I can say that playing the piano, compulsive reading, rowing, like those things, they share a common characteristic, especially playing the piano. But it's this thing where you get to repeat something and try to make it perfect again and again and again. And so there was something about the full mind-body engagement around that. It's like a relief. You get to take a break from the freneticism or the constant change and shift, and you get to just really focus in and focus your entire body, because you're using all of the muscles in your body pretty much, and you get to use your entire brain, because it takes a lot of energy to move in the right way, and to be able to try again and again and again and again and make something perfect. And to chase that perfection, I think, is what really drove me. And it's just a very satisfying feeling. I describe it, it's like scratching an itch on the inside of your belly that you didn't even know you had, But once you start to scratch it, it feels really good. And how many other exercises allow you to, A, pursue that like one perfect stroke, and B, really do turn on your psoas. And people don't know they don't even know that they have a psoas probably, but it's one of the very few exercises that does engage all of the muscles around your core, your legs, your back, your arms, and turning them all on at once it requires a larger electrical impulse from your brain than maybe any other activity, other than like throwing a punch or something like that. If you really throw a punch up from the ground, but it's really, really compelling once you start to dig in. And rowers don't have language around that. They talk about the sunrise and the water, but I think that's what has made rowing survive despite all of the ups and downs in the sport.
Right, fabulous. And with regards to, kind of the coaching part of it, did you find that, again, was that part of the experience, being able to share that and help others improve? I mean, you've coached more than you've obviously, and we're going to talk about Hydrow in a minute, but you've coached for a lot longer than obviously you've been a CEO. What kind of joy and experience did you get through that?
Coaching is, I don't know if this is fair or not, but I think like coaching and CEOing and being an artist are very similar endeavors. You've got you've got a medium, and in the case of coaching, your medium is a boat and water and people. The people is the hard part, obviously. And you're trying to make, again, this like very beautiful thing, the most beautiful, 240 stroke experience that you can have, that gets you from point A to point B within the boundaries of this medium in the most perfect way that you can. And that pursuit of perfection, I think, it's so much fun to do that with other people. And especially at the national team level, because it is everybody's maximum. There's nothing you won't do to try and make it perfect. And that includes, the physical fitness part of it, but mostly it's the concentration and the mind-body connection and dealing with the natural world. And it's an incredibly rich experience. And when you really dig into that, it's incomparable. It's so special and such a privilege to be able to do. And truthfully, since I started the company, I haven't been able to coach at all. And it's one of the one of the big regrets about starting this company is that it's
Yeah,
taken me out of the
yeah.
coaching realm
Well, you're
for a little
coaching
bit.
your team, right? I mean,
I
that's
know, no, and that's why I say CEOing and coaching are really
right, right.
super similar. Yeah.
I remember when we were novice parents, and coming to our first matches and having just no idea what the sport was about. And, you kind of struggle while you're at the side of the river and trying to see, where are they and how soon will they come and all that. And I remember a probably 2 or 3 year ahead of us parents said, well, you've got to read Boys in the Boat, right?
Oh yeah.
And that was kind of the mandatory, and most
Yeah.
parents read it. And I'll never forget how much of an impact that had on me in really trying to understand kind of the real psychology of what it takes to be a good rower, and
Right.
that focus, that concentration, that teamwork. The whole concept of rowing in the same direction, right? We use it as an idiom. But it was such an amazing story, and I wonder, as you've gone through those years of coaching, have you seen a lot of real personal development? Do you see people that maybe get into the sport and think, oh man, I'm going to do this or whatever, but then it kind of takes over them and they become kind of a different person? I'd love to hear any stories about that.
Yeah. The most amazing thing. So coaching at Loyola Academy. So it's a suburb of Chicago, Wilmette, and you've got these teenage boys, and so the parents have basically relinquished all hope.
Yeah, dropped them off, right?
Yeah, no, they're like, okay. And so these kids who won't get up, won't do their chores, won't do their schoolwork,
Right.
are disrespectful, thoughtless, selfish creatures, and they're just they're at the hopefully the nadir of their human development, and they find this sport, and all of a sudden the parents will come up to you, a month or two into the experience, and they'll say like, hey, what did you do with my kid? Because they're all of a sudden they're like badgering me to get up at 5 a.m. to get them to practice on time, because they know if they're late, their 7 teammates are going to be paying the price, and they will not do it. And they have suddenly become altruistic, hardworking, focused. They come home, they eat right, they get their homework done.
They go to bed early.
Yeah, no, and the parents are just left scratching their heads, like,
Yeah.
what drug are you using? Have you got some kind of mind control?
What kind of incentives are you
Yeah,
providing them?
I know. It's really crazy. And rowing does that to people. I think, every human being is born alone. And we just crave that kind of connection. And there are very few opportunities where you achieve a state of flow with another group of people as quickly as you can rowing. And that was actually one of the reasons we started Hydrow. We wanted to deliver that to people's homes, not force them to go down to the boathouse at 5 a.m. and figure out how to row, but actually be able to get some of that directly into their life. But it is unique. I think all sports ultimately aim at that flow, and the best teams all have that experience. But most teams, because they're different parts and different positions, and you're looking at 10 or 20,000 hours before you get there. With rowing, you get there almost instantly, because it's your whole body and you're doing this rhythmic motion, and it really does. It's connective in a way that very few things are. And I think that's the magic that drives that transformation that people experience. It's really cool to be around.
Fabulous. And for those of our listeners that have been in a boat, whether it's a single or a 4 or an 8, they're very light. How should I say?
Right.
And kind of unstable. I mean, you have to figure out how to get balanced real quickly. And if you're not doing that with the rest of the folks and figuring that out quickly, you learn quick, right? I mean, I think that's kind of the way it goes. Or you don't like it at all, I suppose.
Or you're out. Yeah, no. And the magic in being in an 8-person or a 4-person shell with one oar each, you only have half of the solution.
That's right.
Like you need the other person to also do their work really well, or you're both in the water. And
that's right.
That's it's a powerful incentive. And if you don't move in rhythm, you end up with a pretty hard oar handle in your back. And so there's this, you are compelled to experience this quickly. Yeah.
Well, tell us about the origins of Hydrow. You've alluded to that, and you've been doing this for coming up on 6 years now, I guess. And what was the inspiration? Were you unhappy with, some of the training equipment out there? You mentioned kind of trying to bring the full water experience to the home, and I grew up on Concept Ones and still have one, I think, or two that have been around a while. Have not yet used Hydrow. Can't wait for the opportunity to do it. I've seen them before,
Yep.
but is it trying to bring another experience? Is it a better workout? Do you feel like it kind of creates that mind body water experience? Tell us just a little bit about the inspiration
Yeah.
around founding the company.
So I think there's been like a growing recognition that rowing machines are the best exercise. And so Concept 2 was founded by Peter and Dick Dressigacker and Judy Greer in the 80s. Water Rower, same thing, founded in the 80s. They kind of grew incrementally. They were like little companies in Rhode Island and Vermont.
Yeah.
And then CrossFit came along, and all of a sudden Concept 2 got like really big. And so CrossFit was founded in 2001, and they started promoting rowing as the best exercise. And people on the inside knew, but it wasn't like widely recognized, I think, that rowing was the best exercise. And then same thing, Orange Theory, when Orange Theory launched in 2010, pretty sophisticated group of people who were launching this studio experience, and they could choose any exercise they wanted, and they chose rowing as one of the modalities, one of the 3 modalities that they use. So I think there are people out there who are promoting rowing as the best exercise. The biggest thing that I was worried about is that these rowing machines didn't connect people to what this sport is about, that feeling of rhythm and human connection and connection to the water. And so we started experimenting. I worked at Community Rowing, which is a rowing club here in Boston. I think it's the largest rowing club in the world. And it's a nonprofit, and it has a bunch of service-based programs that are aimed at helping people feel better, whether you're a vet recovering from invisible injuries or you have some physical challenges. We will get you out on the water at CRI. So I had this group of people, and we'd spent 10 years really trying to make rowing genuinely accessible. I was really worried that rowing machines were going to take over. They are inevitably going to take over from bikes because there's just better exercise, but they weren't going to be connected to the thing that makes rowing really great, which is that feeling of rhythm and that experience of water. And obviously we can't get every single person in the world out on a river, at the same time. There are a lot of logistical challenges to that, but we can use new technology, which really was not available until like 2015 or 2016, to digitize a substantial portion of that experience of rhythm and splash and sweat and put that into somebody's living room. And so we really wanted to connect rowing machines to the sport of rowing. And I think, so far the response has been so compelling from our members. They really do experience it. It's not the full thing, but it is a significant percentage of what rowing feels like. And I'm so excited that it works. And it's only, we're in the early innings. As that digitization continues to improve, we see a really, really bright future to continue to connect people to the parts of the sport that make it so compelling.
Love it. And how big's the organization today? Offices just in Boston? Do you have other locations?
Yeah, we have locations here in Boston and also in the United Kingdom. And we're selling in the United States and Canada and the UK, looking forward to expand worldwide. And we have about 130 people total in the organization. Our manufacturing is in Taiwan, and we have some great relationships in Taiwan with really high quality contract manufacturers. And so we built 2 products. Most of our sales are direct to consumer, but you can also find us in Best Buy and Fabletics and a few other locations. We're also in a number of hotels.
Oh, fabulous. Now, a little bit about the transition, because as you mentioned, you were the executive director of Community Rowing for a number of years, operating as a nonprofit, and now CEO of a for-profit organization. Was that transition difficult for you?
It was really, really fun to have access to capital.
Yeah.
We bootstrapped. We really treated Community Rowing like a startup, and we were growing. The first 7 years that I was there, we had a higher than 25% compound annual growth rate. And so it was really, really fun and really exciting and dynamic organization to work in. And we grew from, 8 or 9 employees to 50 full-time and 150 part-time coaches, and really, really fun, like really engaging, but to have access to not hundreds of thousands, but millions of dollars to hire the best talent in the world and to go as fast as our imagination could take us, I think has been, just the most interesting part of this. But ultimately, very, very similar skill sets. And honestly, running a nonprofit is a great training ground in terms of discipline.
Learn to be scrappy.
Yeah, you really do. And I'm very grateful for that experience and have really, really enjoyed having, a real budget and a group of people who are just literally the best in the world at what they do and so much fun to collaborate with.
Are you private equity backed? Are you, bootstrapping it yourself among some?
Yeah, no, we have kind of a great origin story there where I got to know a Wall Street, the Wall Street Journal sometimes calls him a tycoon. His name is Dick Cash, and he's the founding partner at One Equity Partners, and he was the first investor in the company, and I got to know him at Community Rowing. He was a supporter there. And then our institutional backing is from L. Catterton, and they are tremendous investors in the space. They have two funds, private equity and a growth fund. We're part of their growth fund group. And they led our Series A. We were the first ever pre-revenue investment that the growth fund had made, or the firm actually as a whole had ever made. And we haven't looked back since. We've had 5 series since then, each led by a different group. Just all of them very high quality. And I've learned a ton working with some really good investors, especially, as the world has become a lot bumpier.
Right.
I so appreciate both great lawyers who set us up really successfully early with really clean docs and great cap table structure, and also investors who are, incredibly good at their jobs and they just will not fail. They stand by their investments because they have so much conviction and they have such a great reputation. We can do things that I know a lot of my colleagues are unable to do right now. So really grateful for their support.
Awesome. Was the pandemic good for you from a sales standpoint? Did the at home, workout routine inspire more people coming on board with Hydrow?
It's a terrible thing to say about the pandemic because there was so much suffering around it. And there is this cognitive dissonance there, but honestly, better lucky than good because we started just before the pandemic. Right. Our supply line held. We were able to produce all of the machines and a few more that we had projected. And we got this enormous turbo boost in our early days. So we were able to build a big subscriber base. And awesome. That subscriber base is invaluable at this point, with the world really shifting to a slower growth mode and different rules around access to growth capital because of the change in interest rates. It's really, it positioned us to be a long-term player in the space and again, we couldn't have timed our launch better as far as that goes.
Yeah. Are most of your users at home? Is it, mixed with regards to university or even commercial or?
Yeah, we're about a little over 90% at home, and then the rest is commercial, whether it's gyms, hotels, PT, the really, really great development opportunities in the B2B space for us because that's like a triple win. It builds awareness as well as sales, and we love our at-home members. They're the heart and soul of our community and our organization.
Yeah, that's amazing. How would you say your leadership style has evolved, Bruce, in the last five years, particularly?
I don't know, that introspective part is always, it's hard to get my view of my leadership style, I hope that I meddle less and am able to serve better. I really view my job as getting people the tools they need to get their job done. And if I can do that, then we're all going to do great. And I know so little about I can't write a line of code. I can't operate a camera. There are so many things that I don't know that people in the organization are the best in the world at. So my job really is to collect resources and make sure that we have a clear North Star. And I hope that I'm better at articulating what that North Star is for our company so that we never break our promise to our consumers, which is, the Hydrow High. We will guarantee that you will feel better if you use your Hydrow even just 5 minutes a day. And as long as we guarantee that North Star and we never break our promise to our consumers, I think we can really thrive as a company.
Yeah. Building a company culture is, so important. And as a founder and CEO, you know that. What would you say is, unusual or perhaps unique about the Hydrow culture?
I was super lucky. The first employee that I hired is named Chris Paul. I just had breakfast with him this morning. He's not with the company anymore, but he was our chief technology officer, and he insisted. He met me. He interviewed me like multiple times. He was like, I asked him for advice on finding a CTO, and he finally said, actually, I'll take the job. And he said, my only condition, A, I need to get paid market rate, which was painful. It's very expensive. And B, you need to get an executive coach. And so he introduced me to one. And my executive coach, Bob Braden, said, okay, we worked together for a few months. It's now time to get super crisp on what your company culture is. And I have an exercise that we can do. And I've done it many times before. He has a PhD in business administration, and he ran a really simple exercise. And basically, I articulated what I thought our company culture could be or what we wanted it to be. And then I stepped out of it, and a group of our employees built our statement around company culture. And it's, inclusive and nimble with purpose and resilient teammates and authentic. So authentic and inclusive. And it's the ability to articulate those 6 words together. And it's not what I said. It was, rhymes with what I was hoping for. But I think leaning into that articulation, and then the most important step, which, Bob was religious with, and I think everybody at Hydrow at least understands, everybody holds everybody else accountable for that culture. And that has held for us through thick and thin. And I believe that that's the most important thing that we've done. Because that operating system, those 6 words, everybody at least, recognizes them. And most people, I think, could say them under duress. It's like, and they're true. And if they're not true, then somebody says like, hey, Bruce, you're not being inclusive, or you're not being authentic. Like, this doesn't feel right to us. Right. And everybody in the company has full authority to throw down a card and say like, hey, we're not respecting this value. Yeah. And it's far from perfect, but I think that process was absolutely foundational in setting us up for long-term success.
Mm. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire at Hydrow, Bruce?
Curiosity, humility, the ability to work hard, and after that, I think everything pretty much takes care of itself.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite interview question that you ask, or kind of try to get at some of those points?
It changes so much, like depending on the people. Some people, like if they're coming from a big company environment, then it takes a couple minutes to peel back the layers and try and figure out what their experience has been, and how they might approach actually having to operate in a much smaller company. With people who are just coming up or just out of school, it's much more conversation about how they view work, and if they do they really do they love work, or is it something that they're doing because they have to. And we try really, really hard to find people who love trying to create what we call the most beautiful human experience. That's our our internal long-term goal. Like, we want to create that most beautiful human experience. And if people are really jazzed by that and they're curious and humble, then but it's not easy to figure that out in an interview. And honestly, I think I'm batting somewhere around 600 or 700, which I'm very pleased with in terms of interviewing, but I've definitely made some colossal blunders in terms of hiring the wrong people too. And it's really hard to figure out in that interview process how people really are, and it takes 2 or 3 months to get that sorted out.
Bruce, you've been super generous with your time, and we're almost out of it here. But we always have one last question we ask all our guests, and that's what kind of life and career advice would you give someone that perhaps wants to be a founder someday, maybe looks through their own corner office, and wants to build a company from scratch as you've done?
Honestly, My best advice is find the thing that you really, really love and ignore money. It's counterintuitive because everybody needs money to live, and I know that it's required. And maybe money's your thing. Maybe that's what you really love. But ignore money, find something you love, and it is amazing what can happen after that.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Well, Bruce Smith, founder and CEO of Hydrow, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.